Oh, what? Where's your toy? Oh, I think I've dropped it. All right, let's go get it. Let's go get it.
No one ever sees me, I'm losing every battle. No one ever sees me, I'm losing every battle. No one ever sees me, I'm losing every battle. Can somebody save me, I'm losing every battle.
Here he is, Mr. Froggy. That's better. Hi.
Whew. What's going on, my friends? It's been a while since I've done a Osmo Pocket video. Today I'm going to do an Osmo Pocket video and we're going to be talking about in-camera transitions. Let's get into it. What's going on, guys? My name is Jason Morris. Yes, today we're actually going to be doing an Osmo Pocket video. I haven't done an Osmo Pocket video in ages. And yes, this is going to be an in-camera transition video with the Osmo Pocket. Now, there's a few tips that we need to go through first before we get into the tutorial. So the first tip I want to talk about is you need to shoot in full manual mode. So you need to be in control of your ISO and shutter speed. Obviously, you need to be in control of your frame rate as well. So you can either select 24 frames per second or 25 frames per second, whichever one suits you guys best. If you're NTSC or PAL, depending on which region obviously you're from. I'm Australia, so we shoot 25. But anyway, with that, you'll need your shutter speed to be twice your frame rate. If you're at 24 frames per second, it's 1/50th. Same with the 25 frames per second, 1/50th. So go 1/50th. So you need that nice, smooth motion blur. Motion blur is key for some of these movements because you're going to need to blend some of these transitions together. You can do it in post, but prefer to do it in camera so you get some nice cinematic motion blur through your footage. So some of the other settings that I did have it in as well, I put it in decenter-like because I like to have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to color grading in post. It just gives you a little bit more of your shadows and highlights, details, so you can bump them up in post, get a little bit more out of your footage. So one of the other manual settings that I want you guys to start thinking about is your white balance. Once again, you don't want your white balance to be changing throughout your footage. You can correct it in post, but if you do set your white balance at say 5600 at daylight, then you won't have any issues with color matching your footage. So let's get into this tutorial anyway. I just want to establish exactly what this thing is about. So I wanted to create a little bit of a story about this and make this whole transition thing flow from start to finish. Essentially, what I did was my bubba was crying. I decided to say, hey, look, you know, we've lost her little froggy. We need to go find it. So a bit of an adventure sort of story to find her toy frog, bringing it back, and voila, she's happy. Yeah, I wish it was that easy, right? Anyway, let's get into the first one. So the first one is a basic swipe transition. Now, you've probably seen this all over the internet. I do this a lot with my videos. It is just a basic swipe left or swipe right, depending on obviously which way you want to go. You just got to take note of which way you go, because if you do swipe right, in your next clip that you need to match it up, you also need to swipe from the right as well. So that's how you pair up the two pieces of footage together. So this is how I went through the first transition of the swipe right.
Oh, what? Where's your toy? Oh, I think I've dropped it. All right, let's go get it. Let's go get it.
So once you finish that swipe right, you continue your movement throughout the footage. Now this one is keying. So this one is actually done in post-production, but you need to make sure that you actually follow the correct rules when you actually do it right there and then, because you're going to be tracking behind the subject. Then in post-production, you're going to be keying out, say, for my instance, the pole, and then that will match, it'll swipe across the screen and it'll reveal the next piece of footage. So you just got to make sure you do this correctly while you're there, and then you can mess around with it in post-production. So what you have to do in post-production, all you need to do is put one footage on a second track, put the other footage on the first track, overlap the footage, create a mask around the pole. You need to track it frame by frame, pushing it through that whole frame, and once it fully reveals the other track, then you're away to go. So the next one is very simple, and it's pretty much the same as the first two. For instance, it's not swipe right and it's not going in front of a subject. Essentially, it's going down behind a subject. So it's almost like a quick tilt transition. So you must make sure that you transition out of that previous transition, and then once you track across your subject or whichever direction it's going, and then you transition into obviously your next transition. So that was down for this instance. So the next one is pretty easy. Once again, you need to come from the top, so coming down on top of the subject, and essentially she just walked directly into the camera, so it went completely black. Now, this one was very basic. Just be careful that you don't obviously wreck the gimbal head and walk into it too much. So yeah, obviously just be cautious of that one. So from that, the next one is actually a match cut. So this one's actually quite simple to do. There's just a few little tips and tricks that you need to know before you do this. So with a match cut, essentially a match cut is when you have one object or a subject in the same spot, and then in the next clip, they're in the same spot again. So with this, I got the whole finger click. So essentially what Amber had to do is make sure that she was pretty much doing that same motion in that same spot. And then obviously I had my composition, so she was framed up perfectly from that previous shot to this shot as well. So you just got to make sure you look through the footage, replay it back, and then see how it works out. So this next one can be done a few different ways. It's very similar to the one beforehand as well, where you walk directly into it, but you actually palm the camera. I've done this a lot with my vlogging, so palming the camera just to make it black. Once again, be sure that you don't palm it too hard and obviously wreck the gimbal. She did it quite softly and it just enough to cover the screen so it goes nice and black. But once again, make sure you transition out of the last one, which allows you to transition obviously into the new one. So once again, I did a match cut for this next one. So transitioning out of that palm, I tracked backwards, looked down at the object. So this one's slightly different to the one beforehand because the one beforehand was mainly about the subject. This one was about the object that the subject was carrying. So essentially Amber threw it up in the air. I had it on a fast track on the gimbal. So you got to make sure it's on the speedy function so you can go nice and fast with this. I forgot to tell you that tip at the start as well. So yeah, keep it on nice and fast and responsive. So when the object goes up into the air, you follow it and then back down. So you really need to keep that object in the center of the frame as best as possible the whole time. So when it goes up, you need to keep it in the middle of the frame. When it comes back down, bring it down quite fast. Obviously, because gravity is going to bring it down fast, you need to keep it in frame, because obviously the next shot, you're going to have to match up that same motion, and the composition needs to be pretty much the same with that object in the center of the screen. And then obviously the last one is the most basic one, because all you need to do is match up the previous shot, and then you can sign out or you can transition out however you want to do it. So I needed to track her throwing the subject or the object up in the air, straight back down, catch it, and then that's the payoff.
Here he is, better. Hi.
So that's it from me, guys. I hope you found this useful. Please hit that like button if you could. That would be absolutely amazing. Comment below if you have any comments on the DJI Osmo Pocket, or if you have any other videos you would like to see me do with the DJI Osmo Pocket or Sony full frame or Sony APS-C cameras. Let us know in the comment section below. I'd definitely like to try and answer those questions as best as possible. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you already haven't, guys. If you guys are new, I do tips, tricks, tutorials, gear, tech reviews, filmmaking stuff, photography, you name it, I do that. So please tune in next time. That would be absolutely amazing. Guys, my name's Jason Morris, and I'll see you in the next one. Here's a transition for you.
Oh, what? Where's your toy? Oh, I think I've dropped it. All right, let's go get it. Let's go get it.
No one ever sees me, I'm losing every battle. No one ever sees me, I'm losing every battle. No one ever sees me, I'm losing every battle. Can somebody save me, I'm losing every battle.
Here he is, Mr. Froggy. That's better. Hi.